Welcome back to Basic Bananas Radio, where we share tried and tested ways to grow your brand and get more customers. Everything from the latest in marketing and branding, right through to growing your team and creating an irresistible culture.
Do you know why in Australia Burger King is called Hungry Jack's? Because when Burger King came into the market in Australia, there already was a trademark on that name, on those words. So they couldn't use the brand here. Today, I am talking to Simon Rowell, who is a specialist in innovation commercialization. And we're talking about the importance of trademarking, how you can protect your brand, and so much more. So let's jump straight in. Hey, Simon, so good to have you on the show here at Basic Bananas. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Really looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, me too. We've crossed paths over the years, over many years actually, through different avenues, and we've connected a few times to talk about your specialty. You run a consultancy in the field of intellectual property and commercialization called Innovation Liberation Front. I love that name.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It was a bit of a decision to sort of step out from the ordinary way of some of the IP firms, with Rowell and Co. or a name or something, so to really stand out and make a distinctive play.
Yeah, a mark. Yeah, I do want to talk about that a little bit because obviously we are all about branding and marketing, and I'm a big fan of really good branding and naming, and I do think it's super important. Before I do ask you a little bit about that, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into this field, into entrepreneurship? And then we do also definitely want to share a little bit about your specialty. Yeah. Because people need to know a bit about what to protect, how to protect their brands and their business names, logos, etc. So let's start with your journey first.
At the start, yeah. So I entered into the world of intellectual property before I even finished university. I ended up getting a job with a firm in Hamilton where I lived at the time and studied. And I was worried at the time that it was a very narrow field, but as I got into it, I realized that it was actually super broad. It touches international law, it touches taxation, it touches intellectual property rights throughout the world are different. They're same regimes, but quite different. And so it ended up being a really interesting field to be in. I ended up being a partner at that same firm by the time I was 28. And I stayed with the firm for about 20-something years, I think, in the end. And about probably 11 years ago, I decided to move into more on the commercial end of IP, so helping people commercialize their ideas, taking them from a basic idea into a business. So that's sort of my journey into it. That's where Innovation Liberation Front was born, fighting for good ideas to prosper.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry, and my camera just has a little freak out here, but I actually love that tag that you have here about fighting for, what was it again?
Yeah, fighting for good ideas to prosper.
Yeah, I love that. And here we go. I'm back here. And the other thing also that I saw when I looked at your business is you have really strong values. You have really bold values, and I might actually just share some of them. You call it your manifesto, and you talk about who dares wins, first win, and then seek battle. They're very battle focused.
Yeah. It's
Tell me a little bit, because I think, and we might add them into the show notes, because it's a really, really great example of how to do things a bit differently. First of all, with your name. Secondly, with your values, with your manifesto, which ties into your name. How did you come up with these? And also, how do you make sure your team are living them?
Yeah. The Innovation Liberation Front brand kind of started out as I was just going to be called Front. That's what I was thinking of. And then it came to me when I was driving. I want to push the boundaries a little bit more. And so Innovation Liberation Front was born, and it sounds like a guerrilla force, right? It sounds like one of these things. And so I sort of played with that in terms of the values. So each of the values kind of comes from something to do with a fighting force or war or what have you. And Yeah, a lot of them are sort of personal values as well of mine and what I believe in. And so, yeah, for me, my team is more of a virtual team than a employee team. So I rally around pulling experts in at various areas that I need to form a team around the client. And so in a way, it's kind of a little bit like a fighting force, but they're not employed by me. They're just people that we engage with who we really trust. So yeah, some of those values, yeah, first win and then seek battle is about strategy. And for me, IP is all about having a really good foundation first. So that means doing the strategy work first rather than sort of an ad hoc approach to, hey, let's protect this, let's protect that, this, and suddenly you've got a portfolio that makes no real sense. And it's costing you money and is actually delivering value. So yeah, that's kind of the values.
Yeah, and do you use them with your clients? Do your clients know about them, or?
Yeah, so they are in my terms of engagement. So every time that they get a terms of engagement, they're there in the background of those.
Really cool. Yeah, I like that. That's really, really clever. Now let's talk a little bit about brands and trademarks. And to be honest, I personally, because I'm not the most detailed person, I guess, it's such a jungle for me sometimes to wade through. I guess that's why we hire people like you to help us entrepreneurs to protect what we have, because we come up with ideas all day long and then like, oh yeah, somebody please help us protect it, because it's not, it's such a, for me personally, it's such a tedious thing to do. For you, it's your passion, and that's what you was. So let's maybe start first with why should we protect our brand, and who definitely has to do that, maybe how to go about it, anything else you can share about it.
Oh, okay. So why protect it? I guess the brand is something that your customers identify you with. It's your badge of origin. It's what keeps people coming back to you, your name, and the way you look, the way you present yourselves to the world. Those things can be protected without having a trademark registration over time, but that takes time to get those rights in a fashion that you can enforce them. And they're also very territorially limited to the areas in which you have customers, so where you actually have goodwill. So if I was to be starting up business in Sydney, had a good customer base there, but nobody knew me in Queensland, for example, somebody could start a business with a very similar name up in Queensland, and there'd be very little I could do about it at that point in time, because I have to have goodwill in Queensland at the time they start. And so that is risky if you ever have plans to expand beyond your state. If you want to do a franchise or anything like that, that can be quite a risky proposition, to leave your trademark to just those what we call common law rights. If, on the other hand, you file for a trademark registration, as soon as you file that, you establish a priority date. So that's your flag in the sand. And once it's registered, its rights throughout the whole of Australia immediately, dating back to the date of that filing. And so you can stop someone in Perth if you've only traded in Sydney and you're brand new. You can still stop someone in Perth from starting up with a similar name. And the registration stops someone from using the same or a similar brand in relation to the same or similar goods or services. And so that's sort of part of the decision-making process that we have to go through when you are looking to protect, is what are we actually going to protect? What do we file for? So with trademarks, you can protect a plain word, you can protect a logo, you can protect a strap line, you can even protect colorways, you can protect the sound, if you like. The sound of a Harley motorcycle, I think, is protected somewhere in the world as a trademark. And so the things, if you're on a budget, the things that I would protect or give priority to would be the plain words of your brand. So Basic Bananas, for example, you go for that as a plain script block capitals trademark that protects it in any stylized form. If you think about sort of someone's brand journey, often they'll have a logo as their first logo. Within maybe 5 years or so, they'll probably update, refresh that logo. And so if you've only filed for the logo version, you're going to have to refile for that in 5 years' time, or whenever you decide to change that logo, to make sure it stays current. So yeah, I would go for the plain words personally. I'd protect the logo as well if you had the budget, because often the logo is quite distinctive. It may have some pictorial elements that are important to you, yeah, you should protect those if you can afford it as well. And
then I assume you protect that in your industry. So Basic Bananas is protected in the marketing space, But if somebody wants to open a fruit shop called Basic Bananas, they can, right?
They could, yeah, they could do that. So your trademark is limited to the goods and services that you file for, and there's 45 different classes of goods and services. And so your marketing would be in class 35. And so it's important to think about what do we do now in terms of services or goods, and what are sort of adjacent fields that we might move into within the next, say, 3 years or 5 years, and also. What would we be really annoyed with if someone, and say you're in marketing and someone started up a software company that was targeting marketing as its field? Would we be annoyed with that? And if you would be, well, then you think, well, let's also apply for that field as well. There is one kicker with that, is that if you haven't used the trademark in relation to some of the goods that you've protected it for within a continuous period of 3 years, someone can apply to remove that from the register. So just be aware that you will have to ultimately at some point may have to show that you've been using that trademark for those other goods and services.
And then also, I guess we have to think about, are we going to expand internationally? I remember with one of my brands, Ocean Lovers, I worked with a trademark lawyer, IP lawyer, and we trademarked it internationally. I remember one country wasn't available. So in that country, I guess somebody could come in and
they could, yeah. So that's an important point. Trademarks are territorial, and your trademark in Australia won't stop someone in New Zealand, for example, necessarily from doing the exact same brand, or in the UK or wherever you might else want to go. We encourage clients before they adopt the trademark, if possible, but certainly before they move into another territory, to do a search of the register in those countries to see what's out there. Make sure you're not going to infringe anyone else's rights before you jump in, or before you sort of spend a lot of money developing a brand identity around a particular word. If you're going to go into the US, for example, within 5 years, you want to make sure that that's available there as well, not just in Australia. International, and there's different ways of going international. You can file directly into each country of interest, which means you end up with a portfolio of maybe however many countries you're going into, say 10 countries, 10 different separate trademark applications, probably 10 different trademark attorneys in different countries, but normally managed through one in Australia. Or you can file a thing called a Madrid Protocol application, which is one application that you can nominate various countries. It's one administrative process. It's a lot easier. You can do it from Australia, and it's generally a lot cheaper to do it that way. It sounds like some sort of spy movie, Madrid Protocol, but it's really just a boring trademark administration regime.
I'm pretty sure that's the one that we did.
And
you said, hey, look up if anyone else, or if you are thinking about going overseas, let's say UK or whatever, look up if there's already a trademark. Where can people look that up?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a website. If you look up WIPO, Global Brand Database, that will point you to a database that's got most of the world, but not all of the world in there. There are some hiccups with that in terms of the frequency with which it's updated and what have you. So it's not necessarily good to rely on that for the final say, but definitely for a sweep of what's out there and what's not, it's useful. The issue, you have to kind of narrow it down to your specific goods and services, because otherwise you potentially will get a huge amount of hits if you just without sort of cutting it back.
Great. I'll add a link on that too.
Absolutely.
I guess also, if we think about the importance of doing this, so if you run a business and one of your major goals is to exit, I guess having a trademark would make it more valuable, I assume, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the due diligence factors that someone will look at. They'll go, well, how protected are these brands? How important have they been treated? And having those registrations in your country that you're operating in, but plus perhaps the acquirer's country and wherever else you might have plans to expand into, is definitely one of the things that they will look at. And yes, you can apply after the fact if they raise that as an issue, but the trademark registrations can take time and there's uncertainty at the start. So having those nailed at the outset is a really good idea.
And once you've got it, how long does it last?
Yeah, so once you have the trademark registered, they can be renewed indefinitely. So you can renew it forever and ever and ever. But it's generally 10 years at a time. So the first registration period is 10 years, and then you renew it for another 10 years, and so on and so on.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to move into how people can go about doing the trademark application either themselves or with someone like you. Have you got some stories of how, because I did hear one recently where somebody didn't trademark their name at the time, and then they grew pretty rapidly, and then suddenly they had to end up spending 100 grand or so to get it done later, or even more. Have you got some crazy stories like that?
Well, I mean, probably the most famous one in Australia would be Hungry Jack's and Burger King. So Burger King, they couldn't call it Burger King in Australia because of someone's trademark registration, I believe. Yeah. But in terms of just every day,
Hungry Jack's, that's right.
Yeah. So, but in terms of everyday things, people, mistakes they can make when they try and do it themselves are they will potentially file in the wrong company name or the wrong entity name. So for example, you might have a holding company or have established a holding company, but your actual trading entity has been using this brand for a period of time. If you file the name of the holding company without having a proper assignment of rights from the operating company into the holding company, before you do that, your whole trademark registration can be invalidated. So that's a mistake that people can make. We talked a little bit about at the start around what do we protect? So sometimes people will protect the logo, and without protecting the plain words, they could have had a broader form of protection. Sometimes they will describe the goods and services in the trademark application too narrowly. We talked a little bit about that. Think about what else you might be doing, and it doesn't have to be so specific. So yeah, those are some of the sort of fish hooks. In terms of costs to go through a trademark attorney, it all varies from attorney to attorney. But through us, you'd probably get a trademark registration in Australia from start to finish around $1,500 plus whatever the government fees are, and that depends on how many classes you're covering. A class per class cost is about 400 Australian dollars. So your sort of minimum will be about $1,900 to get from start to finish.
Yeah, so super valuable. Is there also a way for people that, I mean, most of us listeners and myself included, I'm not patient enough to do this myself, not knowledgeable enough. I don't have the time.
Yeah.
If somebody is like has the time, which obviously nobody does, can they do it themselves?
Yes, you can. Yeah. You have to go to IP Australia, log in to an account there, and then you just follow the prompts, I guess, to apply for the trademark yourself. You have to insert what the brand is, what you want to protect. There's a few little things, but there's explanations all the way through, so you can ask for help in the process. So I do know clients of mine who have done it and have done it reasonably well. But I also know people who have done it and have done a pretty poor job of it. It just depends on how well you and how much time you want to spend in figuring it out.
Yeah, I guess that's why we pay specialists so that we don't have
help me.
Like I guess that's why we go to a mechanic to fix the car. I'm not going to watch YouTube videos to try
I certainly won't.
Take me 3 days. Yeah, exactly. I love that. Any other questions, thoughts, anything that I didn't ask you?
Just one of the things that popped into my brain when we were thinking about this conversation was around, choosing the brand in the first place. There's sometimes a bit of a struggle between the client sometimes wants to use a brand that's quite descriptive of what they do, and says what it is on the can. It says what it is on the can, sort of thing. And in a trademark world, that descriptive mark is very difficult to protect, and it's also very difficult to enforce people who get close to descriptive words, because anybody should be allowed to call their marketing agency something marketing, right? Clever marketing, for example. It should be able to use words like clever and marketing together, and so they could get pretty close to that without infringing. Whereas if you do something cool like basic bananas, doesn't mean anything in relation to the industry you're in. It's very distinctive. It's going to be very difficult for someone to get close to bananas without you having a crack at them. It's sort of makes it more enforceable, makes it easier to protect in the first place, easier to register. So yeah, it's sort of one of those things I encourage people to think about, well, you want to stand out from the crowd, like Innovation Liberation Front, right? You want to stand out from the pack. Choose something that's distinctive, and it's not something that others are going to want to naturally get kind of close to. So that's sort of another little piece that I thought might be useful.
That's so useful, and that's very much in line of how I would like to advise people to build their brands. And I'm glad to hear that that's also in their favor when it comes to protecting their brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Coming up with something a bit more distinctive, as you would say.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Simon. This has been super helpful. I know many of our listeners, many of our members are working so hard on building, growing their businesses, yet they lack protection. So this is, a slightly different topic to what we normally talk about, yet so helpful, useful. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you and get help?
Yeah, you can find me at innovationliberationfront.com or Simon at ilfhq.com for email.
Great. Awesome. We'll put those details in the show notes too. And then also LinkedIn, I think you are.
Yeah, LinkedIn for sure. Yep.
Connect with. Yeah, great. Awesome.
Thanks so much for having me.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for sharing your intel with our listeners. And you, the listener, thank you for tuning in as always. If you know someone who would benefit from this conversation, please feel free to share it with them, and we'll catch you next time.
To get more from Basic Bananas and to learn new ways to grow your business with clever marketing, visit basicbananas.com.